Hello, people. I'm Detroit Miracle. Yes, and indeed. How many of you out there are readers in terms of reading books? It might be books, magazines, newspapers, and etc., but you are actively reading. Now, let's get into books. I noticed that too many people aren't drawn to read books, but on the other hand, those same people will read a newspaper. And you know why? It's because the book looks too enormous for them to think that they can read that book anytime soon, but the newspaper appears to be sectioned in articles where you have various sections of the paper in which people choose to read and they choose not to read. So the paper looks a little bit lighter or a lot lighter as far as having lesser material to read than the book does. So yeah, people are turned off to books or turned off to reading because books are enormously thick in pages. We're not talking about 100-page book even, but and that is a lot to read. We're talking about a 400-page book on average. And I have met people that do prefer to read huge books like that because they say that they get a bigger, complete story, which tells them more than the film would in a way, without the necessarily visual in terms, but you can visualize anyway in terms of what the story is telling you and what directions is going into. Yeah, I noticed that when I went to the library, at times there weren't a lot of people taking out a lot of books, but the books were all over the place. The shelves were filled. I noticed that people were muchly renting DVDs, Blu-rays, and video games. Yeah, folks, for those of you who didn't know, you can also rent video games at the library. You can also rent movies and films as well. I must say that I've taken advantage of that in my day as far as taking out some rentals. I'm not that big of a reader in terms of reading a lot of other authors' material in terms of that. I read maybe a few books my entire life. That's one was the Bible, and the Bible was the biggest book that I've ever read. It had more than 1,300 pages, or I think more than 1,200 pages. And I did find it intriguing. Why don't someone make a movie about all the Bible books? Just say they do take it on themselves to start with Genesis and then make every movie of the books in the Bibles leading up to Revelations. Like, why don't movie makers think to do things like that? I'm sure the religious crowds would pile in the theaters all day and all night to see things like that, to actually see the Bible being formatted into movies or films. But that is another story. Yeah, I find that people also would much rather watch the movie in its entirety instead of reading the book adaptation of that. But there are a lot of readers still that would read the book as well as seeing it because they would want to know the complete entire story. And the movies don't tell you what the characters are actually thinking, but the book does. The books tend to do that, in other words. So yeah, I wanted to express that about reading, and I wondered how you felt about it. Yeah, knowledge is power, and knowledge comes with understanding and responsibility too. Indeed. Well, have a good one, all of you. Stay tuned.